National's set to embrace Winston Peters if needed. Labor's housing support policy gains backing from the sector, and the clean-up continues in Queenstown. Kia ora, I'm Wilhelmina Shrimpton, and these are your latest NZ Herald headlines. National Party leader Christopher Luxon has finally confirmed his party will work with Winston Peters if needed. It comes after weeks of questions about whether he would. Luxon made the announcement on social media this morning, saying that if necessary, he'd reach out to New Zealand First to ensure a change in government. He says the move isn't his first preference, but that he's willing to work with Winston Peters.
If New Zealand First is returned to Parliament and I need to pick up the phone to Mr Peters to keep Labour and the coalition of chaos out, I will make that call. And frankly, I think Chris Hipkins will ultimately do exactly the same thing.
Meanwhile, a commitment by Labour to increase housing support is being welcomed by the sector. The party pledges it will build another 6,000 public homes by 2027 if re-elected next month. Labour also promises it will ensure 25% of the homes are accessibly designed, up from 15%. Community Housing Aotearoa's Paul Gilbert says there's a big wait list of people in need.
We've had a period of well over 30 years of quite chronic underinvestment in affordable housing, and of course one of the parts of affordable housing that's very important is public housing.
A Foot Locker store on Auckland's Queen Street has been targeted by ram raiders early this morning. Police were called to the scene around 3 a.m. where a stolen vehicle was used to smash through the shop front. The car was abandoned on the footpath before the offenders fled the scene in a second vehicle. Heavy rain warnings are in place for Eastern Bay of Plenty, with downpours expected well into the afternoon. It's also in place for Tairāwhiti north of Gisborne. Met Service meteorologist Carl Lutz says this front was responsible for bringing heavier rain to southern parts of the country.
This front is particularly slow moving, so the northern parts of the North Island in particular are going to be getting rainfall for much of Monday.
And South Island residents are continuing to pick up the pieces following last week's severe storm. States of emergency were lifted in Queenstown and Southland over the weekend, leaving locals to focus on the clean-up. About a third of Queenstown Cemetery has been affected by last week's heavy downpours and remains closed to the public. Some headstones have been displaced and slashes lying across the cemetery surface in the northeast section, but no below ground disturbance is visible. A boil water notice was lifted in Gore yesterday, but several closed streets are to be reassessed today as floodwaters drop. And those are the latest NZ Herald headlines. For more news worth knowing, head to nzherald.co.nz.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. To stay up to date with all the latest news from the New Zealand Herald, click the subscribe button below or check out one of the videos here, and head over to nzherald.co.nz for more details on these stories and more.